Hello YouTubers. Today is something a little different. I'm going to review the Carver TFM-35 power amp. Now Carver Corporation is no longer in existence. However, they did produce audio components from 1978 until 1996 and some very fine components, I might add. A little background on Carver. In the late 1970s, the Audio Corporation Macintosh held these events where you could bring your own audio equipment that you made at home, your homemade stuff like homemade amps. You could bring those in and they would test them with their test equipment, and they would tell you like how much power they're putting out and how much distortion and so forth, and they would print out a graph to show this. So one day a young man named Robert Carver showed up at one of these events, and they asked him, well, where's your amp? And he held up a coffee can, and they go, no, really, where's your amp? And again, he said, this is my amp, and it was a Folgers coffee can. Turns out he had built an amplifier using a coffee can because he didn't have money to buy a case to put all the components in. And they said, well, Mr. Carver, we're going to test your amp. How much power do you think it's putting out? And Mr. Carver replied, about 350 watts per channel. And I'm sure they kind of laughed and snickered, and they go, no, really, how much power is it putting out? And he told them 350 watts per channel. Well, they tested his amp, and it did, in fact, put out 350 watts per channel at a low rate of distortion. And at that time, an audio legend was born. And Bob Carver went on to found the company Phase Linear and also Carver Audio, and his current company is called Sunfire. Now, Carver manufactured amplifiers, preamps, tuners, CD players, many different varieties of audio components, but I think they're probably best known for their amplifiers. This particular amp, the TFM-35, is called a magnetic field power amplifier, and TFM stands for transfer function modification. Now what this means is that this amp is made to emulate the sound of a tube amplifier, and although it is not tube, it is said to sound very much like a tube amp. Also, if you look at this amp, the power rating on this amp is 250 watts per channel at 8 ohms and 350 watts per channel at 4 ohms. And it weighs about 25 pounds. Now contrast this with a conventional amplifier, the Emotiva XPA1, with about the same power rating. This amp weighs about 80 pounds and is considerably larger than the Carver. Now this Carver amp is a very clean and natural sounding amp, very non-fatiguing at high frequencies and all frequencies actually. Very good signal to noise ratio. Just overall a very nice amp for stereo listening or for home theater. It also can be bridged to mono with a switch on the back, and it will put out approximately 700 watts into 8 ohms in mono. So if you're a power fanatic and you really want to have a whole lot of power, you can get 2 of these and bridge them to mono. You'd have 700 watts per side. These amps retail for approximately $300 used. There's quite a few of them on eBay right now. I picked this one up at Craigslist. It was sold by someone in my local area, and I believe I paid a little bit more than $300 for it. The amp has analog power meters. I'll turn it on for you here, which is kind of cool, and they light up. You may find on some of these amps that the light bulbs that light the power meters have burned out, but these can be replaced, or they can be replaced by an LED light, which is kind of neat. I'll show you that right here. Now this amp, I had it serviced. This is a TFM-15CB, and as well as having it serviced, I had them replace the light bulbs with the LED bulbs And I guess the lifespan of these is quite long. So, and not only that, but the blue color looks kind of cool too. One question you may have is, I guess I just kind of answered it, but are these amps still repairable and maintainable? And the answer to that is yes, they are. There's at least 2 places that I know of that repair these amps, and the parts are still available. So you don't have to worry about if you buy one and it breaks down, that you won't be able to get it repaired, because you will. The advantages of the amp are it's lightweight. You won't bust your butt trying to drag it around like a 70 or 80 pound amp. High power, high current. It's able to drive speakers that are difficult to drive. For example, like my speakers are Teal CS7s, which only have a sensitivity of 87 dB, and they're 4 ohm speakers, and the impedance can drop down to 2.7 ohms at certain frequencies. This Carver doesn't have any problem at all driving those speakers. So if you have difficult to drive speakers, you need a lot of power, but you don't have a ton of money to spend on an amp, this Carver might be a good alternative for you. Like I say, it's good for stereo listing, for home theater. You can bridge it to mono for a tremendous amount of power if you like. And these are fairly easy to find. I mean, I think there's 5 or 6 of them on eBay right now. This is a TFM-35, and I believe 1994 they changed the designation to TFM-35X. The X meaning that the amp was THX certified, and it does bear the THX logo on the front. So you may see some of those, and I guess that's the main difference between this one and that one, is the THX certification. This amp sold for around $700 when it was new, and can be picked up probably for around $300 used. It's as far as to sum up, I think it's a very fine sounding amp. It's a cool looking amp. It's basically designed by an audio legend in Bob Carver, and Bob Carver's legacy lives on. Carver Corporation may not be around anymore, but his products still are, and I think people will be holding on to these for quite a while because they really are an innovative design. So if you're looking for a nice power amp with a lot of power, reliable, quiet, good signal to noise ratio, fine sounding amp, you may want to try one of these Carver TFM power amps. And thanks for watching my review.